If you're thinking about investing in Hawaii real estate and you are either a non-resident of the state or a non-citizen of the United States, there is a withholding that you very much need to be aware of. I'm Loni Mercado, your Hawaii home hunter. Welcome back to my channel. When you sell your Hawaii property, you could potentially see 7.25% of the sale price withheld for HARPTA and another 15% of the sale price withheld for FIRPTA. Before you panic, here's the most important thing to understand. Withholding does not necessarily mean that's the amount of tax you actually owe. Think of it more like money being held upfront toward a potential tax liability. So let's break down what each one means, who it applies to, and why investors need to plan for it before they sell. HARPTA stands for the Hawaii Real Property Tax Act. HARPTA is Hawaii's withholding system designed to help the state collect income taxes that may be owed when a non-resident sells Hawaii real estate. The current general HARPTA withholding rate is 7.25% of the purchase price of a property. Here's where investors sometimes get caught off guard. It's generally based on the purchase amount, not simply your profit. So let's use an easy example. You purchased an investment property in Hawaii for $500,000 and later sold it for $800,000. Your general HARPTA withholding could be $800,000 times 7.25%, which equates to $58,000. That's $58,000 potentially withheld from your proceeds at closing. That doesn't automatically mean that you owe Hawaii $58,000 in taxes. The withholding is essentially a prepayment toward the seller's potential Hawaii income tax obligation. There are also circumstances where a seller may qualify for an exemption, reduction, or waiver. For example, Hawaii provides Form N-289 for certain exemptions and Form N-288B to apply for a withholding certificate. Depending on the circumstances, that certificate may reduce or eliminate the amount that needs to be withheld. This is exactly why investors should be talking with their CPA or tax professionals before closing, not 3 days before when they finally look at their estimated settlement statements. Now let's talk about FIRPTA. FIRPTA stands for the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. This is federal, not state. It generally applies when a non-US citizen person sells a property in the US. The standard FIRPTA withholding rate is 15% of the purchase price. Again, not necessarily 15% of your profit. Let's take the same $800,000 sale. If the seller is considered a non-US citizen person for FIRPTA purposes, $800,000 times 15% is $120,000. That's a substantial amount of money. There are exceptions and reduced rates. For example, when an individual buyer purchases a property to use as a residence, FIRPTA withholding can generally be zero when the purchase amount is $300,000 or less, provided the IRS residence use requirements are satisfied. For qualifying residence purchases over $300,000 and up to $1 million, the withholding rate can generally be reduced to 10%. Above $1 million, the general 15% rate applies. A foreign seller may also be able to apply to the IRS for a withholding certificate when the standard withholding would exceed the seller's maximum tax liability. So what if both apply? Here's where it gets really important for foreign investors owning property in Hawaii. HARPTA and FIRPTA are two separate withholding systems. HARPTA is Hawaii state withholding, and FIRPTA is federal withholding. So, a foreign investor selling Hawaii real estate could potentially be dealing with both. Using our simple $800,000 example, HARPTA at 7.25% is $58,000. FIRPTA at 15% is $120,000. That's potentially $178,000 withheld at closing before considering other closing expenses. Again, that doesn't mean the investor ultimately owes $178,000 in taxes, but from a cash flow standpoint, that's a very big deal. And if you're planning to take your proceeds from one investment and immediately moving them into another investment, you need to know what your actual available proceeds may look like. So if you're purchasing Hawaii real estate as an investment, don't wait until you're ready to sell to learn about HARPTA and FIRPTA. You should understand how your residency or foreign status affects withholding, how much could potentially be withheld when you sell, whether you may qualify for a withholding certificate or exemption, how a future 1031 exchange or tax strategy could affect your transaction, and most importantly, understand the difference between withholding and your actual tax liability. Your realtor should understand enough to identify the issue and make sure you're asking the right questions. But your realtor is not your CPA or tax attorney. That's where your tax professional comes in. If you're thinking about buying an investment property, second home, or vacation property here in Hawaii, don't just ask, "What can I buy?" Ask, "What's my strategy when I eventually sell?" Because a good investment strategy starts before your purchase, not when you're already sitting at the closing table. I'm Loni Mercado, your Hawaii home hunter. If Hawaii real estate is part of your investment plan, let's talk strategy.